So it's funny to me, Rod, because, the last time we talked was almost 3 years ago, two and a quarter years, and we talked about cult movies, and I don't know how nobody was talking about The Awakening as the next great cult cinema classic from the 1980s. I mean, this is a film that should be reappraised by so many people. The fact that we're not talking about it in every film studies class right now is shocking.
Are you joking?
I am joking so hard. I almost am halfway tempted to apologize to you for what you had to endure and for what we're about to talk about. But
I've seen this 3 times now in total in my life, so it wasn't you. It's not your fault. Only that third viewing.
Well, thank God for that. So on this episode of the Culture Cast, I am still your host, Chris Dashy, much to the chagrin of many, and I am joined by my good friend all the way from Flick Attack. You have heard him over on the projection booth many a times, and he has an article in a Little Zodiac book that you can pick up right now on Amazon, but it is a cinematic deep dive into this film that is David Fincher's Zodiac, which is, well, it's my favorite David Fincher film. Your friend and mine, Flick Attack's own Rod Lott.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Thank you for showing up, even though I wouldn't have blamed you if you had just left and bailed on me. Good God.
I'm off this week. It's Christmas. It's a New Year's week. I always take it off. I've got nothing else to do.
You and me both, it would seem. On this episode of the Culture Cast, we are rounding out Universal Monsters Abroad Month, where we're talking about Universal Monsters in movies that aren't Universal movies, with 1980s Mummy movie, as I was led to believe, Mummy film, Mike Newell's The Awakening.
Through the ages, the ancient monuments of Egypt have been hunting grounds for archaeologists, tourists, and grave robbers. One by one, the sacred tombs of pharaohs and queens have been violated, yielding their priceless treasures and occult mysteries. But the evil one, Kara, has slept undisturbed for thousands of years, waiting for the awakening.
She must have killed thousands.
Kara must be forever alone. Do not approach Kara, lest your soul be withered.
The inscription was a warning for mankind. For all those who take part in her awakening are doomed. Charlton Heston, obsessed by the awakening, intrudes where no man should go.
I'm frightened.
Susanna York disobeys the ancient warning that threatens to destroy her.
You're going to try the ritual, aren't you?
Stephanie Zimbalist defies the deadly legend and brings forth the terror.
Help me!
The evil one must be forever alone. She must not live again. For 4,000 years, she has been silent and dead and waiting for the awakening. They thought they had buried her forever.
There's a mummy on the front. It's not your fault.
It's not that is what I told my family when I watched it with them last night. I was like, guys, I want you to understand, because they kept asking, like, why did you pick this? And my response was, look at the poster. Doesn't it look cool? on Plex, it shows like the poster in the bottom left. And I was like, man, like, look at the poster. And everybody was like, no, like, it looked cool. Yeah. So, well, it's not. So it's directed by Mike Newell, written by Chris Bryant, Alan Scott, and Clive Exton. It is based on the novella, or I guess the story, The Jewel of the Seven Stars by Bram Stoker, and the film stars Charlton Heston, Susanna York, Jill Townsend, and Remington Steele's own Stephanie Zimbalist, who you can hear an interview with her over on 80s TV Ladies, talking all about the show that made her famous. Not this movie, thank God. Can you imagine that? I want to talk about Remington Steele and The Awakening. I bet you do. And yeah, so the film is all about Charlton Heston, who is Matt Korbeck, a Egyptologist who goes looking for Kara, the Egyptian queen who is cursed. And, I think we're really not sure what happened in this movie, even after having watched it 2 times. So there's a curse, and it involves him and his daughter and his wife, and things happen. Or maybe they don't. We'll talk about it. So, Rod, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. You mentioned you've watched this 3 times, only once for this show. So just why? What drove you to watch it the 2 other times?
Okay, so when it came out in 1980, I was 9. You can do the math. I remember seeing it on, I don't know if it was HBO or some cable service soon after that as a kid. Completely forgot about it, as one does, until it hit DVD through Warner Archive, probably about 10 years ago, I guess, something like that. Watched it for that, reviewed it, and I was like, I kind of actually liked that. And then I watched it again when you invited me here, and I was like, what was I thinking fingers ago?
Trying to figure out how you could have liked it.
Well, I remember the circumstances watching that the second time, and it involved the DVD screen playing in a corner of my desktop and me multitasking, doing other things. So, just my eyes darting down while I'm doing other things and getting, I'd seen it before. So it's like I kind of knew what happens, ? But yeah, I think it was just like maybe a bit of nostalgia, a childhood nostalgia mixed in with multitasking equals not a valid criticism.
I mean, hey, you know what? I think as someone who multitasks a lot and takes pride in his ability to multitask, as I'm sure you do, I can 100% understand how you may have enjoyed this movie multitasking, because there's a lot of dialogue and there's not a lot of anything else in the way of I can't say this very often, but I haven't watched a whole lot of movies where by the end of it I just go, what did I gain from watching this? It's weird. So, I picked this movie because, again, doing Universal Monster movies, The Mummy is my favorite of the Universal Monsters. Right. I kind of figured as much, given you're here. Everybody this month kind of that picked stuff. El Goro went on Silver Bullet, and then Spencer Parsons did Frankenstein Unbound, and like everybody kind of was in the thing that they're into. And I've been here the whole month kind of getting to enjoy everybody else's kind of love for these things. So before we talk about The Awakening, let's talk about kind of mummy movies in general. What's kind of your favorite? What's kind of your take on the mummy subgenre of Universal monster movies?
Love mummy movies. It's interesting. I mean, mummy's always been considered kind of the second level of Universal monsters. Probably, I mean, I assume in part because unlike Dracula and Frankenstein, the Mummy's not based on a book, or even a short story. I think it comes more from legend and folklore, obviously from Egypt.
Right, the haunted tomb, right?
Yeah, and there's something, no pun intended, universal about the Mummy's appeal. And even if you've never seen a mummy movie, kids know what a mummy is. They know, it's the guy dressed in toilet paper who walks like this. And there's something that's really fun about that. I've long loved mummy movies since seeing the original Universal one on TV as a kid. There hasn't been a great deal of them, actually. When you look at the list, there's not an incredible amount of them. There were sort of like 3 stages of mummy movies. You've got the Universal, and then it sort of became a Hammer thing, and I guess the Aztec mummy sort of a transition stage in between there. And then you have
fighting a lot of luchadors, eh?
And then you have your modern ones from the Brendan Fraser mummy that everyone knows. But
how do you feel about Brendan Fraser's mummy, though? That's the question.
I honestly, I love that movie.
Okay, good.
It's a lot of fun.
Okay, good. It's like the closest I feel like we've ever gotten to somebody recapturing the idea that they had when they made Raiders of the Lost Ark. Maybe not Raiders of the Lost Ark, but the idea of Like, let's just go make a fun movie based on serialized action stuff. And like, I think that The Mummy works in that regard. Is it the best movie ever made?
No.
No, but it doesn't have to be. Now, the
Not at
second
all.
one, on the other hand, whew, all bets are off. All bets are off on that one. You're going to have a personal opinion on that one. Everybody does. But that first one is a genuinely great film. Came out in 99. Great year for movies. So,
And there haven't been many good ones. I mean, not that there have been many Mummy movies after that, but many good ones since. It's just, for some reason, it's a difficult thing for filmmakers to crack. In part because, I mean, mummies don't talk. I guess they have to take human form to do that, which sort of kills the idea.
right.
And that, I've seen even terrible amount of terrible mummy movies, including one that is based on the same Bram Stoker short story that this is, which is Bram Stoker's The Mummy, or Bram Stoker's Legend of the Mummy, depending on which box you want to look at.
Right.
Which came out in the late 90s, I think, right before Brendan Fraser's Mummy. And it's with Louis Gossett Jr. and it's freaking terrible. I don't even know what happens in that one either. So
this is a recurring theme in mummy movies, huh?
Even seeing that one, it didn't occur to me, even with Stoker's name in the title, that it was based on the same short story, because it is so confusing, just like The Awakening is so confusing. There's a lot to sort of figure out, and that Mike Newell and this is his first movie, Mike Newell, I believe.
Yeah, it is.
Just like, obviously he learned as he went along. Not that I'm a huge Mike Newell person, but he got better. There's a lot left to just interpretation. I don't think that's intentional. That's probably Warner Studio interference, or who knows, but it's not good. It's really not good.
It's transition to the movie. It's what's weird is, again, as someone who has spent the last year reading a lot of books, I think my count now is like 107 or 108. I spent a lot of this year reading, and there is a literary quality to this film that works in the story. But in the movie, it's hard to capture gothic horror when you're setting something in the 80s or 70s. Like, you're not doing it in a way that is really hewing close to the source material, which is fine. They don't have to. I mean, all of us have seen plenty of things that take the source material and say, using it as a shell, but we're going to do our own thing outside of it. And they kind of do that here, right? This is set in the 70s. The original story is not set in the 70s. There's a lot of changes, but at the same time, the original story is like the character of the queen. Her presence feels kind of ever present and kind of a stifling presence on everything that's going on. And she is never far from the actions, even though she's not really ever there. In this movie, I don't really get a sense of who the antagonist is until the last 2 minutes of the movie, 5 minutes of the movie. It's weird, because not only do we have a movie that starts with a, set before the main action, and then we have a time jump, which can already present problems if you're not talented as a screenwriter to navigate that. But none of the actors age. And so outside of the fact that they tell us it's 18 years of a time jump, which is a long time. I mean, the movie is effectively set in 1980. Even though there's a time jump, Charlton Heston doesn't look any older. Nobody looks any older. That's never really addressed. It's all very strange just on the face of it. And then the plot is Charlton Heston's trying to prevent his daughter from being turned into the reincarnation of the Egyptian queen, but he doesn't know that. I can't for the life of me figure out what his motivation is in the movie.
No. Now, one person does age, and the baby becomes Stephanie Zimbalist.
Right. The baby becomes an adult.
Other than that, yeah, you're correct. And she's sort of this daughter he hasn't really been part of his life, because in the prologue, he's married to Susanna York, right? And
yeah. Yep.
But his assistant, he sort of has this flirtation with. Or no, Susanna York is.
No, Susanna York
Sorry.
is the wife. Yeah.
Yeah. So then makes that jump. He's now married to the assistant, and so the mother of Stephanie Zimbalist is they live apart. Like I guess they're in London,
And they're in America, maybe?
yeah, and so they haven't spoken for 18 years or whatever. Really, I mean, he hasn't been part of her life other than sending birthday presents and birthday cards.
Right.
Because they live far apart, so they're somewhat estranged. But
Well,
you know,
she
sudden-
leaves. She just well, it's
mom takes off. Like we're gone.
out of the hospital. Like if this were
That's right.
if this were a better movie, you would assume that I assume that the mom disappeared because something to do with the mummy. No, she just left because she knew that he was never going to leave his wife for her.
Yeah, and I mean, he's married to his work essentially,
Right.
and his wife and his daughter were always going to be secondary to that. So I think that's the deal with the wife leaving. But yeah, she just takes the baby and is like bye bye, and then when we see the child next, it's not a child anymore. It's Stephanie Zimbalist. She's beautiful. A couple years away from Remington Steele, but she's gorgeous. And then he gets called to go to England, right? Because I don't know. It's like
It's hard to remember what the hell happened in the movie.
yeah. Sorry, no. Oh gosh, no. He's got to apologize. So like back in Egypt.
It's not your fault that this movie is fucking.
Oh, I know.
It
It is confusing.
what I couldn't figure out throughout the entire narrative of this movie was, where are they most of the time? Are they in? The movie opens in Egypt, yes,
Correct.
but then
Then it's England,
they're in England when they have the baby.
and then Mary is Stephanie Zimbalist,
Yeah,
and her mom lived in America. So I think it's falling together for me. So she goes from America to England to see Chuck Heston,
yeah,
and that's where she starts becoming this evil kid. At first, you're not sure if she's it's all because of the tomb that he opened of Queen Kara. You're not sure if she's being possessed or if she's even aware that she's being. I'm sorry, I called her Mary, Margaret, whatever.
same
Aware
difference.
she's being possessed.
Well,
but she just starts acting odd.
and she starts
and
acting
things
odd.
start happening.
But she starts acting odd, even though, I mean, because at the beginning of the movie, she's stillborn, and is dead. And then as Charlton Heston and his assistant go into that tomb, she comes back to life. But I guess we're just supposed to believe, there was that inscription above the door, but the inscription of the door doesn't have anything to do with your body being taken over by someone else. I guess it's just, are we led to believe that she came back to life because of the ancient Egyptian queen making her come back to life?
I think it's because it happens at the same time. So the wife goes into labor a couple months early. Like you said, Margaret's stillborn, and then miraculously comes alive, probably maybe because she's possessed by the soul of Kara, the Egyptian queen, whose tomb just got raided by Susanna York and Charlton Heston. And there's a tragedy at the site, but then, which is a cool scene. There are some really cool scenes in this movie, but like you said, they are just
It's few and far between.
packed within stretches and stretches and stretches of dialogue. But so yeah, Margaret turns 18 and just suddenly feels compelled to go to England to see her dad, and that's when she starts going full evil. It goes from totally normal daughter to full evil, and by evil we mean things happen around her. She's not like doing anything. It's just like in her presence.
Literally not doing anything.
Kind of like how in The Omen, which this movie owes a lot of debt to The Omen, except The Omen is really good. But it's like that where things happen. Because Damien is around and bad things happen. And that's sort of the idea here, is bad things happen.
Well, and that's funny that you bring up The Omen, because in The Omen, at least early on in The Omen, Damien is not making anything happen, right?
It's been a while since I've seen The Omen, but it's like he's not doing it, no, but it's because something about because he's the son of the devil.
Right. They can like tell.
Things, yeah, exactly. Like dogs sure know.
Right. And then like the one housekeeper that's taking care of him knows, and she kills herself. Like it does have shades of that, but at the same time, like the scene with Ian McDiarmid, like it's stuff like that where it out of context, the scenes don't make any sense. And then within the framework of the movie, we have Ian McDiarmid in the film for one movie, for one scene. That's it. Mm-hmm. He's just there to get murdered. I guess maybe he dies. Again, we don't even know what is the outcome of most of these characters by the end of the movie. Some of them have died, and then other characters we see in one scene, and that's it. I'm not sure what moment she became possessed. I assume it's when she turned 18 and decided to come see Charlton Heston, but not really explained. We're just kind of given, there she's going, and that's the age that Kara died. So,
yeah,
like,
could be.
Right. And again, like, this is not us misinterpreting the movie. This is the movie not really taking it upon itself to explain anything. It's almost like there needs to be, I don't know, like I would like to say that there needs to be like more expository stuff in this movie, like a couple scenes of just exposition dumping, but I don't think that would fix it.
No, but it would have to replace the dialogue that is really meaningless, that just goes on and doesn't tell you anything. But, Charlton Heston does talk to Margaret, his daughter, about the reincarnation legend that, Kara can reincarnate herself.
Right.
I do remember there are scenes where he does that, but you're right. He doesn't quite connect the two, like, oh, this person who just got killed in front of my face, that's because of Kara. It's the curse of Kara.
Right. Well, and he even explains, Charlton Heston, like you said, he explains to her in front of her and his wife, like what the story of Kara is, which is also kind of strange. There seems to be some sort of component of her and her father hooking up. Did we mention? We haven't mentioned any of the weird incestuous stuff happening in this movie either, where Stephanie Similis totally doesn't kiss Charlton Heston on the mouth.
That really came to the forefront on this last minute. Obviously, it went over my head at age 9, and my eyes must not have looked on the screen when I saw it the second time. But yeah, there's some definite inappropriate relationship going on. But that's why he, there was a part where I wondered, like, if Heston was being possessed as well, because he starts doing weird stuff too, like trying to conduct a ritual to, bring Kara back. But the whole thing is just mishmash of ideas that never are properly sorted out. I mean, the fact that 3 screenwriters are credited, I don't know if they work together. I'm guessing not.
The way I've been told, when their names are listed like that, I don't think any of them did.
Yeah, it just sounds like wasn't there on the page, wasn't there on the day of shooting, and it definitely wasn't there in the edit. So
yeah, that's what Mike.
Money held.
Well, I was to say that's what Mike. That's what Mike Newell blames for the problem with the movie is the post, the post pro, the editing.
It could be.
Yeah.
Maybe they're trying to hit a release date. I mean, that wasn't quite the thing back in 1980, but they did release it on Halloween, so it could be that.
Right.
It's like, we just got to get this out. Because at the time, we already mentioned The Omen, but there was a very short-lived era of studios doing these prestige horror movies. Obviously, The Exorcist in 73 kicked it off, but even around 1980, you had, The Omen, The Omen 2, The Dracula with Frank Langella. Like, for a very short time, this big studio horror was in, and it was, adult, not pornographic, obviously, but it wasn't courting kids.
This isn't either. Like, no kid would watch this movie and be like, this is a lot of fun. Like, no. Right. For who is this fun?
Ghost Story, based on the Peter Straub novel. That was like a year after this. Starring like 4 old men. Like, it was geared toward adult moviegoers.
Right.
And I think the failure of this and that, the Ghost Story, probably killed it for a long time, if not ever, forever. Because then we were all into slashers.
Right. I mean, that's the 80s are obviously known for that almost exclusively. I mean, obviously plenty of other stuff like you just mentioned did come out, but by the time, early like 81 rolls around, everybody is wanting to see just whatever is as far from this as humanly possible. I mean, you think about the first Friday the 13th or, just Nightmare on Elm Street, like just what they are at their core is so diametrically opposed to this. But at the same time, like you said, there was that moment where readapting or adapting, in the case of this story, a story by a known writer. I mean, Bram Stoker is not unknown. Wrote fucking Dracula. Yeah, doesn't get credited nearly enough, but has obviously created one of the great literary characters. So you look at other stories from Bram Stoker and go, okay, like has curbside appeal immediately, right? Guy who wrote Dracula. So can't be that far from quality, right?
And it's free.
And it's exactly
public domain.
Exactly.
Have you read Jewel of the Seven Stars?
Have I?
Yeah, have you read it?
I read it a while ago in like a compilation of other Bram Stoker stuff. It's okay. It's not my cup of tea. I mean, I'm like,
I'd agree.
Most of Stoker's stuff is okay. It's all kind of in the same vein. It's all gothic horror, which, I mean, if you're into, cool. For me, fucking baseboards and shit creaking is not. I mean, again, like, it's a matter of what you want. If you want to read the story where you're set in the middle of a scary house or in the middle of a scary tomb and the scariness is from the environ around you, Bram Stoker's your guy. But
yeah, I feel like, I mean, I remember reading it 15 to 20 years ago, and it didn't stick with me. It made some sense while I was reading it, but it kind of left me going, yeah, okay, I guess. A lot of his stuff does that for me. Just, I find it wanting. Dracula seemed to be like, he's essentially a one-hit wonder. Some people are going to be very angry about that, but it's true. I mean, that's what he's known for. Other things he's written, I'm not saying they're terrible. I'm just like, nothing ever came close to that. Other things that have been, adapted for film, like, I think of Ken Russell's Lair of the White Worm. Man, that movie is insane.
That movie's fucking nuts. I forgot that's a Bram Stoker thing too, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's nothing like the source material. So, I don't even know if that counts.
And that's pretty much just the Dracula story anyways. Like,
yeah. This is, for the most part, The Awakening follows the Jewel. The idea, the structure, not every beat, but it doesn't have the father-daughter thing. I remember that.
Right.
So that's for the movie.
Which is a weird addition out of you. Like, that was the thing, like the weird incestuous undertone of this movie. And it's not even really undertone. Like, it's right there. I mean, Stephanie Zimbalist kisses Charlton Heston on the fucking mouth. So it's right there. It's completely unnecessary. And I wonder what is the script reasoning for having that happen? Is it to show that they have a close relationship? I just don't understand what it is, or his infatuation with her because she may be Kara reincarnated. Like, the movie doesn't do a good enough job of telling me why I should care that they're making out. I just know that they shouldn't be. That's all I know.
They definitely don't have a close relationship up until then.
Right.
Wink, wink.
Right, but that's like, we're supposed to believe that they do. Like, I
think he's so obsessed with the queen Kara and the idea of her coming back that even if that means losing his daughter in a way to the reincarnation, I think he's for it because he's so up on his Egyptology. That's really all he cares about. I mean, like, comes to see him in England, and he hasn't seen her for since she's been a child. He like looks at her like hubba hubba. Like, does he never not seen pictures of her this whole time? It's just strange. I mean, it goes unexplained. just one of those many, many things that the movie doesn't talk about.
And it's one of those things where the movie, not only should the movie talk about it, but if it's not going to explain it, these are not the kinds of things you should talk about without explaining. Like why this character is trying to have an incestuous relationship with his daughter. Like,
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, go for it. I'm yawning. I'm sighing at myself, not at you. I'm sighing at myself because I feel like I did us a disservice by watching this movie. Because this is genuinely, Rod, one of the worst movies I've ever done for this show. In over 500 episodes, like we were talking about before I started fucking recording, I have done 550 plus episodes of this show. This is, without a doubt, one of the worst movies I've watched for this show, bar none. It's so boring.
There's on the plus side, I was able to unload my DVD on eBay for $5. So thank you.
$5.
That's one less disc I have at home. So my wife thanks you as well. Just to talk about some of the positive things.
Yeah, let's be positive for a moment. Let's stop dragging a movie that totally doesn't deserve to be dragged.
I love the deaths. The accidents. I put that in air quotes.
Yeah.
Like there aren't enough of them. That's one problem though, because you have this great death in the beginning with the guy falling from the cliff and getting hung. That's awesome. There's a scene later where they're in the tomb and the tomb is booby trapped and this bike comes out of nowhere, like towards the camera from darkness. That's that's kind of a jump scare if you're not expecting it. That's cool. But there's not enough of that. Like there's some really cool things, but they're just over in an instant. And if it had more of that, I think if it went full horror, that's the thing. It's like you say gothic horror and it kind of is, but it also kind of isn't. Like it's so interested in the human part versus the supernatural part that it never really fully commits to being a horror film. And again, I don't know if that's a video thing or what, but it just and that could be Charlton Heston exercising his over the production. Like I want this character to be this and this and that, but it just doesn't quite ever gel.
No, and you're completely right. The idea that gothic horror is what this is going for in a modern setting, it is. I mean, we just talked about The Omen. That's a gothic horror movie, right? Like, and that's set in the 70s. I mean, this is set in the 80s. I mean, 80 on the dot. So, I wonder what was the push to kind of weaken the horror elements of the movie, because there's no goddamn mummy in this movie. There's no mummy. I mean, again, like this can't be overstated enough. I'm sorry. There's no mummy in the Mummy movie that we watched. There's a mummy on the poster, and there's no mummy in the movie. There's a mummy in the mummy is the final minute of the movie.
Yeah, the poster, not just the box. I mean, the poster, the theatrical release poster, mummy front and center, bandages up on everything except the eyes. I think the mummy even has its arms crossed.
Yeah.
Like you got pyramids in the background, night sky. You're expecting a mummy, and there's no mummy.
No.
There's a sarcophagus.
Yeah, plenty of times.
Yeah. Although that is annoying, I mean, even knowing that, going in, I was still looking forward to rewatching this.
Right. Well, that's not the problem. The movie is not bad because there's no mummy in it. Like it has so many other problems. Like not having a mummy killing people is really like, yeah. I mean, sure it did, but like there are way worse things. We've already talked about a whole boatload of them.
Obviously, it's totally mismarketed, but I don't blame Warner Brothers on this one because they had to get people in seats somehow, and a mummy, not having a mummy on a mummy movie was not gonna work. So I don't blame them for putting it on the poster, but obviously word got around because this wasn't a hit. But
no, it was not. Not only was it not a hit, I mean, I think it was like an Australian budget of like $5 million, and it made like $8 million American. And they weren't asking Charlton Heston to come back and make any more horror movies.
No.
And you know what? never talked about him on this show. So here we have an opportunity. Let's do something we've never done before. I've never talked about Charlton Heston before on this show. We've never had an opportunity to talk about him. What's your take on Mr. Heston? The NRA's finest, Mr. Heston.
I prefer to forget that part.
Right. That's fair.
Although during that time, I actually met him. He came to Oklahoma City in like 94, 95 on a political thing with
sure.
Senator Jim Inhofe, who is from Oklahoma. No longer a senator, thank God, but he was like in it forever. And Inhofe is known for being a huge climate change denier. So fuck that guy. But
lovely.
He brought Charlton Heston with him. It was like a campaign thing. I'm not even exactly sure why, but he called him Carlton Heston at this festival.
I'm sure that made him feel good.
He's like, I want you to meet my good friend Carlton Heston.
This fucking Alfonso Ribeiro comes out and starts fucking dancing.
Anyway, I got to meet Charlton Heston. I had him sign a 8x10
DVD of The Awakening. Your DVD of The Awakening.
It was not out yet. I had all I had for him to sign was like El Cid. There's a press photo for El Cid. So I still have that. I think he was nice enough for the 60 seconds I got to meet him. But I do really like Planet of the Apes. I love Planet of the Apes. He's not one of the greatest actors, but I think in the right roles, Charlton Heston is great. Especially, he had a nice run in the 70s, and this not included. But with Soylent Green and The and these are not movies I love, but I have a kind of just admire. And he had this sort of nice run as kind of a weird sci-fi guy.
He was he was also in The Mouth of Madness randomly.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Mouth of Madness.
Yeah, in The Mouth of Madness, True Lies. He was like he was the narrator of Armageddon. I don't know if you remember that. He's like 30 million years ago, an asteroid hit the Earth. It could be happening again. Like that was the time when being Charlton Heston meant that you could just be the narrator in things. Because in the 90s, he has voice credits on several things where it's just because he's Charlton Heston. It's like I'm too young to have an opinion. I'm too young to really have an opinion on him. I've seen him in Planet of the Apes, and that's about it. I've never gone back and watched his oeuvre, as it were, or seen his body of work. Planet of the Apes, Ben-Hur, that's kind of it.
My favorite Charlton Heston is, or I guess I should say, are his disaster movies. I'm a huge fan of the 70s disaster movie cycle, and he made a ton of them. I mean, he's in Skyjacked, which takes place in an airplane, just like the airport sequel he did. He's in 2 Minute Warning, which is in a stadium. Earthquake, which is a famous one. He did a ton of them, and he's a lot of fun in those. That's my favorite Heston era. I don't care for the 10 Commandments, El Cid, the big epic stuff that made his career.
Right.
I have no love for that, but the 70s Charlton Heston is for me the best Charlton Heston.
It's kind of the time he was doing some weird stuff, right? Just kind of
totally.
Yeah.
Totally weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And not cameo in Wayne's World 2.
Right. Or again, effectively cameoing in again, in The Mouth of Madness, it's effectively a cameo, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's just, what is he? He's like the head of the publishing house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I need you to go find Sutter Kane. That's pretty much his entire role in the movies. But there's some gravitas that's lent by it being Charlton Heston.
True. He's in True Lies. I remember a cameo there.
Yeah.
So that was kind of fun. And then he does the cameo in Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, which is stupid because he's just there to repeat his.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
He plays the dying ape, and he gets to repeat his line about damn dirty apes.
As the ape, right?
But yeah, as the ape. But he's only in it just because he was in the first one. It's one of those legacy sequel or legacy remake things where it's like, we got to bring back one person from the original, even if it's in a different role. And but I'm going to the screening of that, the press screening, preview screening, and man, when he came on, and people erupted in
For
applause.
Planet of the Apes?
Yep.
Holy shit, man.
I know.
What a different time it was, man. What a different time. A more simple, might even say pastoral time.
It made a lot of money. It did make a lot of money.
Oh,
But yeah, it has not aged well, that's for sure.
I don't think it was good when it came out.
No. No, but it did. I mean, it was a hit. It was a big hit.
I know. I honestly, thinking, like, when I think about that movie, the movie that they ended it on is a much more interesting movie than the movie
agree.
we got, right? Like,
Mhm.
I know everybody
That's the
drags,
one.
right? Everybody drags that movie, rightfully so. Like, it's not a good movie, but that movie at the end that they were promising, man, would have been something really weird. I mean, fucking apes just, look, I'm not going to complain. Those Matt Reeves Planet of the Apes movies are fucking legitimately amazing films. So
Mhm.
whatever Tim Burton would have made would have just been weird, but something to be said for weird, especially when it's Tim Burton's brand of weird.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't really, I don't have much of an opinion on Charlton Heston, and this movie is not going to really change that. That's the biggest shame. They went out of their way to cast Charlton Heston. He was still a big deal in 1979,
True.
1980. So it's not like, like with what we're talking about, where it's like, oh, this is some afterthought. Like, he's the fucking lead. He is first billed here. He is on screen 90% of the time. Like,
He's probably the reason it got made. Like I'm assuming if he said no or bailed out of it, it would not have been made.
But
Still
I
a
would
draw.
think- yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I know he's a better actor than this. I can't tell if it's they didn't give him anything to do or just he didn't want to do whatever it is they wanted him to do. I hope it's not that, but it's such a weird non-horror movie that is almost required to be a horror movie in a way. Like, it should have been a horror movie first and a character study second, but it's not even an interesting character study. None of the characters are interesting.
No, it's not one of his best. Since you haven't seen many of his movies, like he's hammy in this, but he's also kind of a hammy actor. He's very, very theatrical.
Right.
In
It's
that
very
way.
big, right?
Yes, very big. And in some cases that really works, like the original Planet of the Apes. He's perfect for that. Here, not so much, but it's not a good performance by any means. And not just because he has that stupid ascot around his neck or whatever.
His
Like-
short shorts in the desert.
But he's like, there's a lot of talented people in this movie. Even just behind the scenes, you have like Jack Cardiff as the cinematographer. Not that the print is great, probably not the best reflection of his work, but he's a legendary cinematographer.
Right.
And you have the title sequence, which is, although dated, still cool, and it's by Maurice Binder, who did all the 007
Right.
intros. So like there's real talent here.
Mike Newell's not a slouch.
No, not by
Mike
any
Mike Newell is one of those like journeyman directors who's worked on like fucking damn near everything, TV, movies, produced a fair amount of stuff. He directed the 4th Harry Potter movie, which is before the kind of, in a lot of points, the inflection point for most people. That's the last good movie in a lot of ways. Like the Goblet of Fire is a very good movie. Not sure how much he brings to it, but it's a good movie, and he directed it. 4 Weddings and a Funeral's pretty good. Donnie Brasco's also pretty good.
Yep.
It's
And it's funny because you just got me thinking, like the last big thing he did, it was after Harry Potter. I think the last big thing was Prince of Persia, Sands of Time, which is one of those video game things with Jake Gyllenhaal. And I like Jake Gyllenhaal as an actor, but that movie is a piece of shit.
it's
And-
better than this movie.
He should have known. Mike Newell should have known. I don't need to get anywhere near sand again. But he did. And he hasn't, like, that's it. That's kind of his career. I mean, it was, then it was TV movies after that. Not knocking TV movies because some are awesome, but I mean, his career was essentially over as a feature film director after that.
He's made some like British adaptations of things, but I'm not sure how popular they were stateside. Like that's the biggest. Well, what's weird for me is Prince of Persia is a bad movie, but Prince of Persia is a much better movie than this. At least Prince of Persia is entertaining.
I don't even remember it as being entertaining. I saw it once and I vowed I would never see it again.
I've watched it in the last 3 years. I even did it. I even did an episode on it. I think either at the beginning of the pandemic or near the beginning. It's not great. It's a late, it's a, I guess, late Disney live action movie or a tens. It has its problems, but at least it's somewhat entertaining. At least something happens. At least by the end of it, we've gone on a journey with the characters. Not this, where it's like, by the end of it, yeah, Charlton Heston dies, kills his... I don't even know what's going on by the end of this movie. By the end of this movie, I assume that his daughter has now become the Egyptian priest or Egyptian queen reincarnated, and he's dead.
Right.
To what end, though?
The end.
The end. To what end? The end.
Which really, for me, could not have come quicker. I mean, this was really a slog.
Yeah, it's an hour and 40 minutes, too, and it feels like 3.
Oh, totally. And there were some scenes that I don't remember the other 2 times that I was like, oh my God, that's hilarious. Like, he's building a safe at his house to put these relics in, from Kara's tomb to keep them safe. And he has like this, basically Batman's utility belt on his wrist that he pulls out this little key.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it's goofy as hell.
What a weird scene.
Very.
It's like, I thought it was a dream sequence. He's like being dragged backwards. And I was like, wait, what is this a dream? And then all of a sudden there's like EMTs at their house. It's like, no, this was actually happening. Like, he was being... I forgot about that scene until you mentioned it. That's
no fault of yours. That's
no, right? My brain is just slowly forgetting. It's just reprogramming itself.
I don't think if I hadn't written it down, I don't think I would have remembered it. But it struck me as like, this is stupid. Like, of all the things you could portray and show, that he's got freaking, I don't know. I mean, I said Batman's utility belt. That's probably the best. The best.
I don't know what else you would call it. Like
the Swiss Army
bracelet. Yeah.
Little trinkets and tools inside of it, specifically for this safe that he's building at his house. God, I hate this movie.
it's such a non movie, and like, I want to end this episode. I want to ask you, like, let's talk about, because this is a weird thing. Like, I don't run across these kinds of movies very often. Like, are there other movies for you that fall into this camp of just like, by the end of it, I'm just like fucking done? Like, what is, by the end of this movie, I was like, I don't want to watch another movie again for a while. I felt so cheated out of an hour and 40 minutes. Right?
I'm sure there are. I would have to like look back at Letterboxd or something to figure that out. I hated. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I watched a movie later that day, but I wasn't about to pop another one in right then because
it feels that bad.
It's pretty crushing. It's a pretty crushing experience. Yeah. Boy, whoever bought this on eBay for me, I'm sorry.
They were really excited that they got it for $5.
It wasn't Stephanie Zimbalist. I don't know who has an excuse for it, but
she's the least with the excuse. This is her first role. Like,
yeah, and she's not good in it, but I don't think she's supposed to be good. Like, I think she's an attractive person who's playing an attractive person. And I think that's really all she's called upon to do, because she sort of doesn't act, because part of her being possessed by the soul is just, be, like show no emotion, just make weird
aloof
faces. Yeah. And she seems to be fine at that because it's not really asking her to do anything. We can all make a face that,
and just stare.
Right.
Stare off into the, I mean, it's just lazy. I don't, but the thing is, if it were a movie worth being upset about, I would be more upset. But it's such just a waste of time that by the end of it, I just go, okay. Like, I guess everybody else got paid and all we had to do was watch. Like, that's the way I feel about this movie. Like, somebody got paid, plenty of people did, to make this movie. We know, they can look down the credits, and every single goddamn person whose name is listed on the credits made money working on this movie. But this movie didn't make any money. Like you mentioned, it was a complete fucking failure. And the reviews, oh my God, the reviews of this movie are brutal, to say
Do
the
you have
least.
them?
So I have a couple here. My favorite one from 2002, it's such a weird one. It's from Ken Hankey of the Mountain Express, Asheville, North Carolina. And all it says is funnier than most comedies.
I mean, he's not wrong, right?
I guess. I guess. Is it funny? I don't,
There are
apparently,
definitely parts that are unintentionally humorous,
right?
but no, it's not really funnier than most comedies.
And I guess Roger and Ebert, Siskel said it was Ebert and Siskel said it was one of the worst movies of 1980s. So
I agree. Yeah,
yeah, but is that hard?
probably not. But I'm sure they were right.
I
I
get.
haven't seen a list in a while, but it has to qualify, has to go on that bottom half of the list, definitely.
And again, like mummy movie without a mummy in it is a failure. And again, like that alone should be a problem. But the fact that it's not a good movie, then on top of it, is not helping
Mhm.
anybody, anything at all.
I like Egyptology, and I sort of enjoy reading about that and seeing it in movies. But even a mummy movie that has a mummy in it can be terrible.
Yeah.
Witness the Tom Cruise The Mummy. I mean,
Oh.
I don't know if you saw that. That the worst modern blockbusters I've ever seen, and I hated that movie.
You know
Although
what?
it did.
Go ahead.
There's one positive. No, you go ahead, and then I'll tell you why. One great
Let's,
thing.
you know what, to end this episode, let's drag that movie because nobody's talking about that. They're talking probably less about that movie. They're probably talking equal about these movies. That Mummy movie, it was so bad it sank a cinematic universe before it even got a chance to exist.
What was it? Dark
The Dark Universe.
Universe. Yes, because it was from Universal Pictures.
They were so convinced they put it. I saw that Mummy movie in theaters, as maybe sounds like you did. And I remember thinking, boy, they're really calling their shot by putting that Dark Universe thing in front of it.
Yep.
Whew.
So the one reason I'm thankful for that movie. So it came out 5 years ago, and at the time, my youngest son was, let's see, doing the math, 11, and I took him to the press screening of it, and he was excited to see it. And afterwards, I didn't like it, but kids like anything, so they're like, yeah, I like it. But
Rod,
but
calling
he's
all
looking-
children out at once.
But he had this puzzled look on his face, and he's like, "So, Dad, who played the mummy in that movie?" And I'm like, "Her name is Sophia Boutella. She was in that Kingsman movie, that had the fake legs." And he's like, "Huh? Well, who?" He just had these questions. Then I don't remember all of them, but he had this he was befuddled and puzzled. And I'm like,
what was that, a movie, Dad?
I'm like, he's like, well, okay, well, so like, who was underneath the bandages? And I'm like, oh, that's probably no one. I think that was just CGI. And he's like, huh. I'm like, Owen, what's up? What are you asking? And he goes, well, basically, what I got out of him was he didn't know who Tom Cruise was, but he knew who Ted Cruz was, and he was expecting Ted Cruz to appear in The Mummy. 2.5 hours, he was waiting for Ted Cruz, and man, I just love that story.
Why did he think
And no Tom Cruise, big new Ted Cruz. So Cruz, Cruz.
Yeah, I felt like, honestly, I think the thing that makes me angriest about that 2017 Mummy movie, realistically, the angriest that I could get about it is amount of missed potential. It's just a missed opportunity, right?
Completely. Oh, yes.
It was literally it could have just been Mission Impossible with a supernatural villain. Like, how did you fuck that up?
Even the worst of the Brendan Fraser Mummy movies is 10 times the movie that Cruise one is.
Yeah. All right. We're talking about the third Mummy movie, right? We're talking about the one where they recast Rachel Weisz. Yeah.
You know what? I'll even go further. Any of the Scorpion King sequels.
Whoa.
are
Whoa, man. Hold on now. Now we're getting crazy. Even the one with like Randy Couture.
I will say I've not seen whatever the last one is. So I may be wrong. That one may be worse. But yeah. I hate this movie.
Well, it's just I don't dislike Tom Cruise. I'm not one of those Tom Cruise
No.
haters. Like, he is what he is. He is who he is. And his action star existence, I think, is what it is. But
I don't know what attracted him to that, other than maybe he's a big Mummy movie fan, like, you and I, and he's like, I want to be in a Mummy movie. But that guy has creative control, so that's on him.
Right.
Something was way off on that, just like it was way off in The Awakening.
Yeah. Yes, Alex Kurtzman can't just direct Transformers movies forever. I don't know. I mean, again, like,
Thankfully.
I don't, maybe, I don't know. I feel like with stuff like Mummy characters, the original works, right? We both like the original. Original Mummy is fantastic.
Mhm. And like all 1 hour of it or whatever.
Right, yeah, 56 minutes. Outside of that, I think to bring this all full circle, like other quality Mummy movies, Brendan Fraser Mummy movies?
Yeah, Abbott and Costello, Meet
Right.
the Mummy, I think is worth watching. The Hammer Mummy movies, which there's like 3 maybe. I'm gonna throw Ed Wood's Orgy of the Dead in there, if that has a mummy in it.
As a mummy.
Oh, the Tales from the Dark Side, the movie, the first segment that has like Steve Buscemi and Julianne Moore and a mummy. That's pretty decent, for a 30-minute.
I've never seen that, but I am intrigued.
You should see it. It's fun. Bubba Hotep, I think, counts. Definitely.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so there it is. Like that's
an all-out comedy.
Yeah.
But one that I do think is underrated, and it's one of those that, I mean, I'm not saying it's great, but it came out on video soon after Brendan Fraser's movie was in.
Oh, here we go.
Russell Mulcahy.
Yeah, he's going there. I was waiting for somebody. I was waiting for one of us to bring it up.
It's direct to video, and it's not great, but I kind of love it. It's pulp, but it's I don't know. It's entertaining as can be for me, and it has a lot of mummy, or at least enough mummy to qualify.
It's got Sean Pertwee in it, who I love in everything as well, and
Jason Scott Lee.
Is that the one with Gerard Butler as well?
No, that's Dracula 2000.
No, Gerard Butler is I think Gerard Butler.
Right.
Yeah, I think
Gerard Butler is in it.
Yeah,
you're right. He's not the star, but he is
right. But he is the star in Dracula. No, in Dracula 2000, is he the? Yeah.
He's Dracula, and it has Christopher Lee, has Pussy Galore, Honor Blackman, Duvall. I mean, Michael Lerner from the Coen Brothers movies. I mean, it has a lot of good people in it on their way down, career-wise. But it has a mummy. It's decent.
More boxes were checked.
For a low-budget mummy movie, Russell Mulcahy's a decent director. He's competent.
Yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah, that's a fun one that you shouldn't watch with too much expectation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kind of like Russell Mulcahy's other film that I'm a fan of, Razorback. Watch it with no expectation. Like,
other than you're going to see a giant pig.
Yeah, exactly. Giant pig. Box checked up. And to bring it truly full circle, Russell Mulcahy directed the second Scorpion King film, Scorpion King 2, Rise of a Warrior, starring one of those UFC dudes. Some UFC guy. Broadly UFC man. So, Randy Couture, that's who was in it. So,
well, there you go. Yeah, him.
Yeah. So Rod, final thoughts on the final film of 2022 for the Culture Cast, The Awakening.
What a terrible movie to end it on.
What a real downer of a spot.
But actually kind of fitting for what has been a crappy year for most people. So actually good pick, Chris. You did it.
You really reflected the state of so many of us by picking a movie.
You did it.
Yeah, it's done.
I don't think it's worth watching, to be honest. Unless you're some completist. And I'm not even a completist when it comes to mummy movies, but unless you're a completist, I don't really think there's reason to watch it. Not even Ironically.
Yeah. I was hoping this month that we would find like a kind of a hidden gem. The Awakening, definitely not. I don't know if you've ever seen Frankenstein Unbound.
Oh yeah, I like that.
I think
I
it's better. It's better. It makes this makes that look like a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah. Love at First Bite.
Yeah, that was the only
Silver
one I did.
Bullet.
That was the only one I didn't get to watch was Love at First Bite. I was traveling, so I didn't get to watch that one. But Silver Bullet was great.
I love Silver Bullet. I've seen that a lot.
It makes
This. I'm done with The Awakening. 3 times
over.
done. Yeah.
Yeah, I am with you. You know, I've watched it twice now, and I don't think that there is anything else that I could glean from this movie. I don't think there's anything else that anyone could realistically get from this movie. I think to your point, if you are a Charlton Heston completionist, or maybe even you're a big Bram Stoker fan, there are better ways to get your jollies than to involve yourself with this movie, which it's not easy to find. It's not just readily available. So, like you said, I think it's a complete skip. And I hate to say that about a movie. Like we said, people worked on it, people got paid, but people did get paid, which means, you know, as sad as we are that the movie's not great, they still got paid. So I'm not crying for them.
I got paid $4.99.
Yeah, right. Ultimately, you got paid too. So
That's right.
there you go. So on that note, we will take a break and we'll play a preview for the first Culture Cast of 2020.
நீங்க எல்லாரும் போய் அந்த பொண்ணு தூக்கிட்டு எங்க ஆட்டு பொங்கலாக்கு வந்து சேருங்கிறேன்.
So on the next Culture Cast, the first Culture Cast of 2023, we're going to be talking about South Indian classic Muthu, starring Rajnikant, who I am super excited to see in a movie that isn't him pretending to be a giant robot when he's in his mid-60s. So that's a thing. It's called Enthuran, and it is a insane South Indian movie where imagine The Matrix meets The Terminator meets Bicentennial Man and Transformers. And if that sounds like something you're into, you should totally check it out because it's fucking insane. But we're going to be talking about Muthu to kick off Indian Cinema Month to coincide with the launch of the Bollywood Cinema Club podcast, which is the newest podcast. For us, it is bi-weekly, and we're going to be talking about Indian cinema once every other week. So a lot of information to get through. But until then, Rod, where could people find you if they were looking for you?
Basically, I run flickattack.com. I'm on Instagram and under that name as well, Facebook under that name as well. I have the first Flick Attack book is out, available at Amazon, called Flick Attack Movie Arsenal, Book 1. Yes, Book 2 is coming out, probably 2024, I'm guessing. That's $19.99 for like 500 pages of reviews and articles and stuff. It's a lot of fun, and I'm not just saying that because I wrote it, but other people said it. But
you should be saying it because you did.
Right. And you mentioned the book, David Fincher's Zodiac. That's what it's called, David Fincher's Zodiac. I have a chapter in there about the 1971 movie, The Zodiac Killer, which everyone knows from Something Weird Video releasing it. And then I've got I've got something with Vinegar Syndrome coming out in February, but I can't talk about it yet other than say February. So, look at that.com in short.
Go there, pick up Rod's book. Reading is cool, folks. I don't know if you know it, but reading is fucking cool. Take it from me. I spent the last year reading more books than I'll probably ever read again until next year. Yeah, as for me, everybody knows already, so I'll plug it once again, weirdingwaymedia.com. That is the podcast network that the Projection Booth's Mike White and I created to act as a repository and suppository for all the things that we work on together, including this show, the Projection Booth, Astounding Tales of the Public Domain, Barney, everything. Just go to weirdingwaymedia.com. I don't need to sell it. Somebody else is going to when you get there. And if you can't find something worth listening to there, you should be listening to it anyways. Rod, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a lot of fun. Hopefully you'll be back later this year at some point talking about a movie talking about something that hopefully isn't this, because this was a fucking drag. I mean, the movie was a drag, but the conversation was fun, so it makes up for it. But
right. I'll be back, and I promise not to confuse Susanna York if she's right.
This movie was so bad, I don't think any amount of confusing anything could change the quality of the movie. So Rod, thank you so much for joining me. This was fun. This was fun. So
absolutely glad to do it. Thanks for having me, and sure I'll be back.
And we'll catch you on the next episode.